Boxing Source proudly presents Real Boxing with legendary fight trainer Ronnie Shields.
Mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. We are, here checking in, and this is a special edition here of Real Boxing. As you have Coach Ronnie Shields, he is preparing to go over to Saudi Arabia as he has one of his fighters that will be heading out there and having a fight there for Riyadh season that is scheduled for November 22nd. Yep, that's right. You're gonna have Vito Mielnicki Jr. as part of that fight card there in Riyadh, as he's gonna be taking on Samuel and Moma. We were talking about this in previous editions of Real Boxing. So that is, it's scheduled for 10 rounds there. And it's part of that card, of course, it's headlined by, David Benavidez going up against Anthony Yarde for the WBC light heavyweight championship. So you're going to have Vito Mielnicki Jr. there against Samuel and Moma as part of that fight card. They got, Benavidez versus Yarde, Brian Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney, Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Martinez, Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. You're going to have Muhammad Al-Akel on this fight card and Sultan Al-Muhammad. Yep. I'm checking there in the box rec, for all of that. So, it's a number of fights that's coming up there for November 22nd. Of course, he is also coming off of a busy weekend as he had three fighters there that were fighting. One there with Otto Wallin on Friday, and two with Joshua Edwards and David Stevens on Saturday, if you were able to check that out, right? So, with that being said, we wanted to see if we could have, a great co-host here, Brother Joseph Herron, but, he is, currently under the weather. So, I'm pretty much going to kind of like a rocket solo here in this edition of Real Boxing. And so, with that, we're going to kind of condense things a little bit, right? We're, usually, have a thing there where you have, rapid fire Q&A, you have the top 10 and, you have the fact or fiction. But since, I'm solo on the dolo with this, right? We're going to cut this down, real quick. I'm going to try to see if also I could try to get some people to, chime in or, go in with the fact or fiction is, this is one thing where I'm going to put something to the test right here when it comes to this streaming apparatus, because I've been having some issues in the past. And I want to see if, this continues here today, because if it is, then I'm going to really roast Rumble. Yep, I'm calling out Rumble on this. I'm going to really roast them, because all this stuff, I didn't really have to deal with all of these issues, for a good little minute while using it. Now I'm having issues like trying to have folks join in, have people come through as a guest and all that type of stuff and whatnot. So we'll have to see how that goes. Now, before I get into this whole thing here with what we're gonna do as far as like the main segment for the show. Of course, I kind of like said this on the channel multiple times that I have been working on trading cards, and yep, I'm still in the works with it. Still got fighters out there that I've been doing here. You got something here. What was this? With the lighting and everything like that. So we gotta see how this kind of like works. Okay, this is probably your best way to do it. All right. So you got something here. You got Gary Antoine Russell. That's one there that I got. Let's see here if this also works. This is Shockey Foster. So I got some for Shockey Foster as well. You got, as I was mentioning there, for November 22nd, Abdullah Mason there. And, you also have, as I say, Santos Saul Alvarez Barragan. No, I didn't put the, complete name on there. It's Saul Canelo Alvarez. So we have these as trading cards. I have, multiple fighters that are on the docket or have been done. Some folks have, or some fighters have already seen it. I'm going to have some more that's going to be available for an upcoming fight card on November 22nd. I'm going to post it as a story on the Instagram page and on the Facebook page. So you're going to see more editions of these trading cards. I'm going to have like a set. I'm telling you, I'm working closer to having a set of cards where people will be able to get either like 10 set of 10 cards, 12 cards. Once I complete the whole series, they'll be able to get all of that too. So I'm just working on that, and then after that, if I get something to where I could expand it, then y'all be able to know how that happens there on that front. So that being said, I was able to get that done. So now what I want to do is I'm going to just get right into it here with this particular segment.
Hey, this show needed the cash cow back to introduce fact or fiction.
Okay there, Floyd Joy Sinclair. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I said it. All right. So, all right, let's see here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have these particular statements on here. And, shout out to Coach Ronnie Shields. Usually he gives his take on it and things like that. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, share what I think about these particular statements and kind of like, expound on them and things like that. So let's get into it. All right, here we go with this first one. Herron getting stopped early in the bout against Virgil Ortiz Jr. means that he is done as a contender. Is that a fact or is it fiction? Well, man, for me, man, that's a fact. Man, unless the only thing that I would say that kind of like would throw it off is if Ortiz-Lubin has another trainer outside of K. Karoma, because man, he just did not have anything there for the fight against Virgil Ortiz Jr. Not much in the first round, and then you see what happened in the second round. And we kind of heard it, during the telecast. 3 fights, 3 trainers for Ortiz-Lubin. You have, a trainer there in the corner, when he had his bout against Jesus Ramos Jr. And that was in September of 2023. He didn't get back in the ring until earlier this year, right? When he, had his bout that was on Pro Box. And that, that was like an extended layoff there. And then him getting in the ring with Arjo Holmes Jr. At the time was an elimination bout for the IBF belt. And yeah, he got the stoppage win, but for some, in hindsight, was it the impressive win? Not that much. And day after the fight, when they talk about the thing there with Ortiz-Lubin getting the win over Arjo Holmes, it was almost like Arjo Holmes was there like a sparring partner of sorts, not really doing anything to try to win the fight, and just trying to like get through the rounds and see if you can get to a decision. And Ortiz-Lubin almost like was obliging to that particular instance. So even with that, going into potentially a fight with Bakur Murtazaliev, as Lubin was at the time the mandatory to Murtazaliev, then having this fight against Virgil Ortiz, who supposed to be coming off of surgery, and now you see Lubin having that poor performance, man. I'm like, man, I can't see it. And he's made a recent post, saying that he could potentially compete at the 160-pound division. And I'm like, well, the thing with 160 is, that 160 isn't really that much, doesn't have that much depth on there anyway. And then, for him to say, hey, you might try your luck there at, 160. Yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So, this is not, not necessarily a good look there, for Ortiz-Lubin. I'm going to see here if I'm going to, put this thing to the test as far as this apparatus, right? Because I want to see here if I could share a statement there from Ortiz-Lubin. All right, there it is. All right, so this is Ortiz-Lubin's statement, from yesterday. Where he says, like, hey, I was a prisoner of my own bad habits, but it's just a lesson and I have to learn from it, turn shit around, and not make it a life sentence. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I'll be back. I'll be better next time at middleweight. Well, what could that mean there for Ortiz-Lubin? He says that he's going to try the middleweight division this time around. Does it imply that maybe he was supposed to just go ahead and try his luck at middleweight, or maybe he was like out of camp, in an extended period of time, to where once he got this news that he would get the Virgil Ortiz fight, it would take him a good while for him to get within that weight. Who knows? The other thing that I was saying earlier, K. Karoma, as a trainer, listen, man, I trust Jake the Snake Roberts when he was a heel more than I trust K. Karoma as a trainer in big fights, man. I'm sorry, but I mean, we've seen multiple examples of fighters that have Karoma as a trainer end up falling short. So that, yeah, I can't necessarily rock with that there when it comes to K. Karoma in big fights. But for Ortiz-Lubin, yeah, I'm not, at least right now, I don't see him seriously contending there, whether it's going to be middleweight or at 154, if he ever considers going back to 154 or stays at 154, because he's been at the super welterweight division his whole career. Now looks like he's gonna say that he's gonna try his luck in the middleweight division. We'll see. All right. So there it is with that. All right, we're going to the next one here on the Fact or Fiction, and here we go. Jake Paul being rejected by Francis Ngannou means that the potential fight card for December 14th is in jeopardy. Is that a fact or is it fiction? Ooh. This could be a fact. This could be a fact. I heard about this news that was like put out there. What was it? Ariel Helwani was there with Chael Sonnen on the Ariel Helwani show, and they were talking about it, saying that Francis Ngannou was not necessarily interested in about with Jake Paul, at least at this point. And of course, we were supposed to be preparing for fight week for, if it was originally scheduled, Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. But with it, being completely scrapped, all of those fights that were on the fight card pretty much got pushed back. You had the WBA super lightweight title that was on the line, as I was mentioning there, right? When you were going to have Gary Antoine Russell, defending that WBA title against Andy Hirioka on that card. Now we're not sure if that particular fight is going to be on December 14th if Jake Paul does fight on December 14th. Depends on, who the opponent is going to be for Jake Paul. That's, from reports. Shout out to Brunch Boxing. You know what I mean? You still had the thing there with Alicia Baumgartner defending 3 of her 4 titles that was on that card. You had a past guest on the Boxing Source YouTube channel, and Avius Griffin, the underdog. He was on that fight card. We got to see if they're going to keep that. If they're going to get that date. If they do, then you're going to see Avius Griffin on there. I talked with his manager, and that's basically what they're waiting on right now. But given this, recent news here about Francis Ngannou, I guess, turning down a fight with Jake Paul, I guess, for that date, then who else is going to be out there, for Jake Paul to fight, at least within that time? Because, man, we pretty much like in a month's time. We're about 4 weeks away. You know what I mean? I'm like this. They had another fighter that was in MMA that was going to be part of the card on November 14th. Why not go ahead and have him as the opponent for Jake Paul? I mean, I don't see why not. I don't see why not. You know what I mean? So, listen, unless if we, get some updates here within the next, I would say 3 days or so, when it comes to Jake Paul, I'm not too confident that they're going to have a fight card on December 14th, particularly if they're gonna have it in Miami Casilla Center, which was the original venue for Jake versus Saint. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Next up here for fact or fiction, this is kind of like the main topic here. So let's do this here. All right. Virgil Ortiz Jr. requesting for Boots Ennis to step in the ring was a smokescreen, as his team does not want the fight next. Fact or fiction? I say that's a fact. It wasn't just a whole thing with the back and forth with Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Jerome Boots Ennis, but a lot of people saw what was going on at the post-fight press conference. A lot of people were seeing what's going on when it comes to not only the promoter for Virgil Ortiz Jr., but also the trainer, also the father, also the manager for Virgil Ortiz Jr. And not all of them were on one accord as far as like saying that, hey, this is the fight. This is what we're going for next. That's it. Let's get it cracking. Let's know what the date is. And we on there. Nope. You got, Oscar De La Hoya saying, oh my God, listen, you see what happened? Look, with that quick knockout, oh man, Virgil Ortiz Jr. is the man. Oh man, we got, Errol Spence Jr., we got Sebastian Fundora, maybe we got Boots, but hey, Virgil Ortiz Jr., he's on the driver's seat. Then you're going to have Virgil Ortiz Jr.'s manager, Rick Marizian, saying, look, unless they got 7 zeros on the back of that check, don't even step to us. That's what Rick Marizian was saying. You got Virgil Ortiz Sr. pretty much talking about the same thing, like saying, oh, we got this, we got that, we got options. Not any of them are saying, oh, no, we want Jerome Boots Ennis. Like, come on, man. You mean to tell me that you have your fighter and Virgil Ortiz Jr. call Boots Ennis into the ring? Boots Ennis Jr. steps up to him and not only kind of like pretty much tells Virgil Ortiz Jr. it's time, but he also told Oscar De La Hoya, Rick Marizian, Robert Garcia, and Virgil Ortiz Sr. He's like, hey, all that stuff you've been talking, he's going to find out. All that stuff y'all was saying, he's going to feel all that. And I'm telling you, once they heard that, it's a different tune they were talking. It's a different tune they was talking. I mean, I'll just say that, man, because you had Oscar De La Hoya leading into this fight talking about Boots. You had Virgil Ortiz Jr. talking about Boots leading into the fight against Ortiz-Lubin. You had everybody else within the team talking about it. And then once he actually shows up, because there was like some talk that Oscar De La Hoya thought that Boots wasn't going to show up. And he showed up. He pulled up to the block and he stepped to the man. And then his whole crew was out there that had been talking stuff. Well, he said, look, all y'all that's been talking, he's going to have to answer for it. And let's see if they're going to do that. Now, here's the thing about it. All this stuff about potentially fighting Errol Spence Jr., like, come on, man, what are we doing? That's almost like a bailout plan. I'm just be real with y'all. That's almost like a bailout plan. Would it be more money to fight Errol Spence Jr.? Of course. That's not even the question. The question is, how are you going to be talking about all this stuff in reference to Jerome Boots Ennis, putting stuff out there through PR, trying to slam on Boots' name, claiming that he was ducking, claiming that he needed 2 tune-ups or whatever it was, and then once he had one fight out of the way, he went up to your block and said, okay, it's time. Let's go. Me versus you next. And now they all talking something different. I don't know, man. That's just absolutely crazy on that front. All right, so that's what I did have for that. Now here's the next one up. All right, with Tiger Johnson beating Nicholas Flies, he should be the fighter to watch out for in the welterweight division. Fact or fiction? Hmm. Actually, this could be a fact. This could be a fact. Listen, Nicholas Flies was doing his thing on Pro Box, man. He was, getting up there in the rankings. There, particularly within the WBO. What I was noticing. I had seen him live on last year, March of last year, over in the Pro Box arena there outside of Plant City. He got a stoppage win at that time, and he had been having some good performances there on Pro Box. Then he has this fight here with Tiger Johnson, and when I seen that as the announcement, I was like, okay, this is going to be something for both fighters to see where they're going to be at in the welterweight division. And Tiger Johnson just completely outclassed Nicholas Flies in that fight. Completely outclassed him. It was only like some moments that Flies had where he was able to land some, body punches, but outside of that, he wasn't the faster fighter. He wasn't like the sharper fighter by any stretch of the imagination. And Tiger Johnson just wasted him, right? So I would say that, yeah, now Tiger Johnson is going to start to enter in these rankings for these sanctioning bodies, the WBO, WBA, maybe the WBC, that type of stuff, and then he's going to get, a couple steps closer to, being a serious contender there in the welterweight division. Now, some people have kind of like brought up potentially within Top Rank, since Tiger Johnson is signed with Top Rank, that you could see maybe a fight between Tiger Johnson and another welterweight contender in Rohan Polanco. That would be a great matchup. That would be a great matchup. Now, I don't know if they would be closer to doing that, because from some statements made with folks within Top Rank, they are really liking Rohan Polanco and could see if they could try to build something with him. So sometimes if they have it like that, you might have another fighter within that stable or that promotional company that's coming up that might want to fight with Rohan Polanco, but might not get it. But hey, you got Tiger Johnson, you got Rohan Polanco, you got the WBO champion there, and Brian Norman Jr., all signed with Top Rank. So that could lead to some good fights for that particular company in 2026. But as of right now, I say, yeah, you gotta be on the lookout for, as they say, Delonte Tiger Johnson. All right, so there's that. All right, next up on the docket right here. Let me see here, because I want to also check something, because I wanted to see if I could get a guest on to join in with us, but I wanted to see if they would be able to properly check, but I don't think they necessarily did. So all right, so I'm gonna go here next. Just going through these things here real quick. All right, so this is what I got here for number 5. All right, even though Xander Zayas might be favored to beat Abbas Barao and become a unified champion, that won't make him even close to being the top fighter at 154. Fact or fiction? Ooh, ooh. Actually, this is a good one. And I could say that this could be a fact. Okay, this could be a fact, and I want to kind of like go through this, because you're gonna have Xander Zayas, who's gonna be around 23 years old, basically around 23 years old, and have this fight against Abbas Barao there that's gonna be in January, right? I have to let me see if I could get the exact date, because I think they had basically announced it that they're gonna have that unification bout in January. And with that being said, it's like, okay, you could have Xander Zayas, who is currently the WBO champion at 154 pounds. You got Abbas Barao that is there as a WBA champion. And they're going to be fighting on Saturday, January 31st. Just pulled it up here. So, January 31st in San Juan, Puerto Rico, right? And so you're going to have, 23 years old, Xander Zayas, who could potentially be a unified champion, right? That's going to be something. Of course, he had been, a contender there within the WBO, had been the WBO mandatory. Ended up fighting for the WBO title, not necessarily against Sebastian Fundora, but he still was able to get the win and become WBO champion. And even after that fight where he won, he said, "Hey, we're going to see if we could get a title defense in Puerto Rico." They were planning to have it at the end of this year, but now they're able to work this out, and it's a unification. So that's something, right? That's something. Now, even with that, can we say that he, if he gets the win, would you consider him to kind of like be the top fighter at 154? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about all that because 154, at least, for, some of these publications or, groups that, kind of like do these rankings, they kind of like have it a little bit questionable of sorts. But one thing I wouldn't necessarily put, Xander Zayas there at number one. Couldn't really put him at number one. Like, for example, I want to see here, shout out to the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board here. I'm going to see if I could try to get this thing on here real quick. But here is like who they got in the rankings for 154 pounds, right? You got, Sebastian Fundora right there. You know what I'm saying? You got Sebastian Fundora. You got Virgil Ortiz Jr., you got Brandon Adams, you got Suri Boachuk, you got Israel Madrimov, you got Jesus Ramos, Xander Zayas there at number 7, Abbas Barao there at number 8, Boots in number 9, and Pavel Sazulin at number 10. Okay. Virgil Ortiz Jr. does, have the win over Ortiz-Lubin, but again, he is a WBC interim champion. Sebastian Fundora is the WBC full champion. And yes, he was a WBC and WBO champion. Didn't necessarily lose the WBO belt in the ring. As he said, he chose for the Tim Tszyu rematch over having a bout against Xander Zayas. More money, not only more money up front, but more money, you give up the WBO belt. You don't have to pay the fees. So, hey, I didn't blame him then. I don't blame him now. So now you're going to have Xander Zayas that's going to now have the opportunity to become unified champion at 154 if he gets his win over Abbas Barao. Now, would we like put Zayas above like an Israel Madrimov or Suri Boachuk or something like that? Now, remember, this particular rating here has somebody missing, right? They have somebody missing on there. Let me kind of like have this off the screen a little bit, and you see those things there at from 1 to 10. There's a fighter that's missing on there. So I'm gonna see here. I'm gonna switch over to the ring rankings. Right, the ring rankings should be showing right now, and it currently shows there Virgil Ortiz 1, Sebastian Fundora at 2, Madrimov at 3, and there is the IBF champion Bakum Murtazaliev at 4. They have Ortiz-Lubin at 5. That's going to change. And Xander Zayas number 6. So if he ends up beating Abbas Barao and becomes a unified champion, would he be placed above a Bakum Murtazaliev, a Sebastian Fundora, Virgil Ortiz? Yeah, I'm not too sure that would necessarily be the case. You know what I mean? So, nah. That's why I was like, nope. Nope. Yo, what's going on, Captain? What's happening with you, man? Thanks for tuning in here. We got this thing here with Real Boxing. As I was mentioning there, you got Coach Ronnie Shields. He's preparing to be over there in Saudi Arabia. Of course, Vito Milnicki Jr. is part of that ring 4 card for November 22nd. So they're gonna have to go out there and get used to the climate and everything like that. Hopefully no shenanigans happen with the fighters once they show up. All right, so we ain't gonna have what happened over like in February 22nd or that week of February 22nd. No, we ain't gonna have it. Not this time around. So that's why we just have me on here, and I'm just doing the whole thing with the fact or fiction as far as like some of the topics here that I put up. So thanks for joining in here live. You know what I'm saying? Hit the like button, hit the share button. You'll have more people know about this thing here with Real Boxing that is every Tuesday here. Now the thing about it is, of course, with Ronnie Shields being gonna making that trip this week, he's gonna be there next week. So yeah, for sure, man, for sure. So he's gonna be out there next week. So for next Tuesday, we're gonna see. We're gonna have another show scheduled there on that front for next Tuesday here, as we wait for the return of Coach Ronnie Shields after November 22nd. All right. So, I was able to go through like the first 5 here in the fact of fiction. All right, now I got another one here with number 6. All right, let's do it. Even with the win over Conor Benn in the rematch, Chris Eubank Jr. won't be any closer to a title shot because he is not interested in having one. Fact or fiction? Ooh. Man, this could potentially be a fact right here. This could be a fact when it comes to Chris Eubank Jr. because it looks like at this point he's going to have a couple of fights where he's going to be paid a good amount of money with these fights against Conor Benn. And, after that, what's going to be out there for him? Is he going to continue to compete in the middleweight division? You already got the whole situation with that. You're going to have a unification bout on December 6th. Erislandy Lara versus Janibek Alhamdulillah. You're going to have Carlos Adames there as the WBC champion. He's going to be most likely defending that title against his mandatory challenger. So with all of those belts, that's kind of be booked here for, I would say, 4 to 6 months at minimum, right? Then what would be out there for Chris Eubank Jr. to step up and say, hey, all right, I'm ready to, challenge for one of these world champions. You know what I'm saying? He said, actual factuals. You know what I mean? Like, if you got, if you getting this money fighting Conor Benn, right, that's coming up from, well, not necessarily coming up from 147 because he ain't really been at 147 pounds in over 2 years, but you still got this thing here with Conor Benn, 2 fights in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, getting some good money. Then it's like almost like what's the point of trying to go after these world champions if you're getting paid this good amount of money, and you could possibly find some other fights where if there's enough interest, they're gonna be able to pay up good amount of money for that. You don't necessarily have to wait for a unified champion after December 6th, or wait for Carlos Adames as well. Maybe Carlos Adames wants to fight the winner of Erislandy Lara versus Janibek for undisputed, and then after that, let's see if Chris Eubank Jr. would have any interest. But as we've seen here over his past, a couple years or whatever it is, he ain't really all too interested in all of that. So yeah, that's what I got on that front. All right. So I'm gonna go move forward and go to the next one here. Number 7. Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy may be getting ahead of themselves by thinking Floyd Schofield Jr. will get a fight with Tank Davis next. Fact or fiction? You know what? I say this is a fact too, man. I say it's a fact. I mean, how long has Floyd Schofield Jr. been the number 1 rated fighter in the WBA rankings in the lightweight division? I'd say it's probably been almost a year. Could have probably be a year or so. The only thing that, kind of like would have affected it is if he had that fight against Shakur Stevenson on February 22nd for the WBC lightweight title. But didn't happen. He was able to, go ahead and have the fight against Tevin Farmer, get a first round knockout. Was supposed to, have the fight against Jojo Diaz, but ended up getting injured. And now you got Oscar De La Hoya making a post that says, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get Tank Davis versus Floyd Schofield Jr." Unless if they're gonna push for, Floyd Schofield to be the mandatory challenger when the upcoming WBA convention happens in Orlando, Florida next month. I don't see where he's like any closer to having that fight. And even if he's going to be named as a mandatory challenger, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tank Davis is going to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to, defend the WBA belt against, Floyd Schofield Jr. Like really though, I just don't see that. You know what I mean? It says in reference to, Chris Eubank Jr. He said, yeah, he'll load around, but doubt that he sticks to 60 either. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, man. Because who knows how long, Chris Eubank Jr. could stay at 160. And then, we was talking about what happened after the first fight and how that was going on. You know what I mean? And in reference to the next one here, he says, yeah, fact, but if Schofield Jr. could get another big dub, it becomes fiction. Okay. Now, who would that be? Now, I would say this. If Floyd Schofield Jr. faces someone like a William Zepeda and gets a win and is impressive in getting that win, then maybe that could have him closer to having a fight with Tank Davis. But outside of that, nah, I don't see it. Like I don't see it at this point. So, what was I saying there as far as like the lightweight rankings? You got, Tank Davis there as the world champion. Floyd Schofield's there at number 1. You know what? He should finally have that fight against Lucas Body or something like that. I think remember, you had the whole thing with originally Floyd Schofield Jr. versus Ashton Silva. That was supposed to happen. It didn't happen. Ashton Silva fought Lucas Body and got hit with a 2-piece and a biscuit. And now you got Lucas Body that's, kind of like riding the wave. And now he's at number 2 in the WBA. So maybe if they say so or something like that, maybe the WBA could say, hey, look, we'll see if you could fight for this final eliminator for the WBA belt, Floyd Schofield versus Lucas Body. Now, you could also have that, and that could have him closer to a fight with Tank. But other than that, nah, I don't see it, man. I just don't see it. At least on that front, I don't see it. All right? All right, so next up on the docket here for Fact or Fiction. All right, here it is. Roy Jones Jr. working with Errol Spence Jr. in the gym is a nothing burger, as there is no chance that Spence is getting back in the ring. Fact or fiction? Man, right now, this is a fact, man. Come on, man. What are we doing? You know what, man? It's almost to the point where you have a number of people that are hopeful, very, very hopeful that Errol Spence Jr. gets back in the ring and has a fight. I mean, I know that, you had what happened on July 29, 2023. That's up and gone. But the amount of, interest, the amount of attention that Errol Spence Jr. has gotten, ever since then, ever since, he was even mentioned of potentially coming back last year. Y'all remember when he stepped in the ring with Sebastian Fundora after Fundora got the win over Tim Tszyu? Folks was talking then. They were talking even before that fight between Fundora and Tim Tszyu, because you had a whole little thing at the time where it was going to be maybe Terrence Crawford being first in line for the winner of Fundora versus Zoo. And then there was like a little bit of a response to that. And then Errol Spence says, I got next on the winner. And then the social media joints go crazy. So that kind of like tells you the appeal that Errol Spence Jr. has. You feel me? But listen, he got, what is it? He got money. He got investments. I guess he's like, the next Floyd Mayweather. Listen, I made smart investments, and I left the game with all of my faculties. Well, I don't know. Well, just being honest with you, I don't know about all the faculties thing, but I mean, he's still good. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like he really has to get back in the ring. It's not like he really has to get back in the ring, but we'll see. Hold on, shout out Timothy Taylor. Hold on. Oh, I hope this is not for this one here, man. Come on, man. Oh, come on, man. Fiction. You said fiction. So you're saying that Errol Spence is getting back in the ring. Hey, my guy Captain says EJ got one more run. I know it. Hey. I don't know, man. Roy Jones Jr. could be like, and then you gotta go in there, and then you gotta work to the body, and then go upstairs, and then after that, you hit him with an uppercut, and then you hit him with a left hook. That's why they call me Captain Hook. Y'all must have forgot. I don't know, man. Listen, when it's just something when you haven't been in a rush to get back in the ring since July of 2023. Regardless of whatever capacity, even if he did come back, by the time he would step in the ring, that would be 3 years out the game. Okay. And yes, we did see recently somebody get back in the ring after about 3 years being out the game, but that guy hadn't ever left the gym. And that's Gary Russell Jr. And with him not ever really like leaving the gym, listen, all of that stuff as far as like being sharp, staying sharp, all that, he was doing that. He was doing that, getting his brothers prepared for fights, all that type of stuff. So he had been in the ring. With Errol Spence Jr., that's completely different. You know what I mean? So, man. So, hey, man, like I said, man, if he even considered it, yeah, but hey, yo, yeah, Roy go get Buddy in the third. Man, listen. Earlier in the show, I was talking about Kate Karoma as a trainer. Roy, I hate to say it, he's a Florida boy, but in the corner for a lot of these fighters, Roy, man, you know what I mean? So, hey, if Spence, kind of like has a few things where he's doing this and doing that, and looks pretty good, that's cool. But one, it had to be a lucrative deal to get him back in the ring. Two, he would have to have a full-time trainer, so to speak. So, and he would have to go through camp. Like, that's the thing. It's like after having what you've gone through before the fight against Terrence Crawford, having a fight against Terrence Crawford, and then be like, yeah, I got my money. I'm good. I done made some decisions, and I'm all right. So I don't know. Like, he wouldn't necessarily be in a rush to get back in the ring. And if it ain't him that was said, there's like a couple other folks that I know that probably would be able to give some hints. Maybe, maybe not. But listen, if he ain't said, he didn't say he's retired. Yeah, I know he didn't say he's retired, but come on, man. Y'all know it's going to take a good little bit for him to get back in the ring. It's going to take a good amount of bread for him to get back in the ring. And, all that talk about him potentially facing Virgil Ortiz Jr., come on. one, it would take a good amount of money for him to get back in the ring. And then you had the whole thing that Virgil Ortiz people was talking about when it came to a potential fight between Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Jerome Boots Ennis. Now, if you're going to talk about 8 figures to fight Jerome Boots Ennis, how much do you think that you would want to face Errol Spence Jr.? Like, come on. So yeah, there it is. You feel me? All right, so let's get to the next one here on the fact or fiction. All right, this is number 9. All right. Christian and Billy choosing to fight Jaime Munguia instead of a rematch with Lester Martinez is a smart move. As in Billy, yeah, that was we added an extra I right there, will fall short against a fighter from Guatemala. Fact or fiction? I would say that's a fact. I was there September 13th at Allegiant Stadium for that fight card. Of course, that was pretty much like the fight of the night. Good scrap between Billy and Martinez. Me being there live, I felt like Martinez got the win. 6 rounds to 4, whatever it was. I felt like I didn't feel like Christian and Billy had enough clean work to defeat Lester Martinez. So speaking of Lester Martinez, I talked about the thing there with the trading cards. I also have Lester Martinez is one of those. They're currently in the series, so also be on the lookout for that. But yeah, and Billy, going over against Jaime Munguia, that would be something. Jaime Munguia is coming off of that whole little thing as far as like the testing stuff that went down. Of course, when he had his rematch there, and man, I would rather have and Billy say, let me just get this fight here against Jaime Munguia. If I get this win, then I'm still, there in the mix. I'm still at the time the WBC interim champion there at 168 pounds. So, why not just go ahead and get this bout here with Jaime Munguia? And if I get this win, I stay up there within the super middleweight division. And then I see what will be going on with the super middleweight titles if Terrence Crawford decides maybe he could do something at 160 pounds or maybe something else. Now, I mentioned in another show for Terrence Crawford to get back in the ring, it would kind of like take something right there. So I'm gonna I'll add this in because that one there, as far as like Christian and Billy and that whole little topic, that was gonna be the last thing for fact or fiction, right? But here's gonna be the other one, man. Oh my God, Jay Pylon's in the building, man. What's going on with you, man? Like I said, brother Jay, you see what's going down, man. Like I said, you seen them, so I got them in the works. I got them ready. As far as like the trading cards, some folks want individual cards, so I'm gonna kind of get those out to them or whatever it is. So once I have the sets ready, then they'll be out, for sale, and people will be able to get them too. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's up. And my guy L Dub in the building. What's going on with you? I feel like what's going down. Y'all check out L Dub Boxing. You know what I'm saying? Kevin says, "Hey, someone's gonna end up messed up for good." I don't know if it's with that and Billy and Lester Martinez, man. But yeah, it's almost like a David Tua versus Agabiabuchi, man. Yeah, yeah, that was something, But that fight on September 13th, that was one of the better fights I've seen this year, So a rematch would be like highly contested, but I still feel like Lester Martinez would give the upper hand in that. So for Christian and Billy and his team there, Eye of the Tiger, going that route against Jaime Munguia, that's going to be, a good route for them here on this front. And then, according to reports, I think it was through Boxing Scene, check it out from Lance Pugmire there for Boxing Scene, says that, Les Martinez is moving forward with the next option, which would be on a Pro Box card in March in Southern California. So is looking to have a bout in March in Southern California that's going to be on ProBox TV. So that's going to be the route there for Lester Martinez on that front. All right, so we had like something there that folks was mentioning with Terrence Crawford, right? Um, but before that, shout out to Adam. There as I was talking about here with the Pro Box thing that was this past weekend. The most impressive win of the week was Tiger Johnson mistreating Nicholas Flores. That was devastating. Yeah, man. Listen, from like round one, Tiger Johnson like already had him. Like, I mean, he was boy, oh boy, like even with the jab, he was, snapping with the jab, and then the right hand was like following through. And when he was landing with that right hand, especially like after he scored that first knockdown, I was saying himself a counter initially. No, that was just a 1-2, boom, boom. And then he got the knockdown. Then the next round after that, he just started landing right hands at the right hands because you had Nicholas Flores, his left hand was down. Like it was almost like he didn't even instinctually have his left hand up. So no, Tiger Johnson's like, all right, you're gonna give me that? Cool. I'll just keep throwing on my hands. Boom, boom, boom. And he just beat him up. You know what I mean? He just beat him up there for that last round there in even though it was pretty much around the end of that round for the fourth round, after that last knockdown, Nicholas Flores got up and then he was saying like he good, and then ref said walk over there, and Flores was walking over there, and he almost like leaned and fell over, and referee waved that belt. So shout out to Tiger Johnson, you know what I'm saying, and as I was mentioning earlier here, I'm gonna go back to it. Let's see here, because I had this thing on a fact and fiction. I said, hey, Tiger Johnson beat Nicholas Flores. He should be the fighter to watch out for in the welterweight division. Yes, he should be. I say he should be. I talked about potentially a fight within Top Rank with Tiger Johnson and Rohan Polanco. It was mentioned in the podcast here on Sunday, as far as like what could be a potential fight out there for Tiger Johnson. Yeah, Rohan Polanco. Both of them are in the Top Rank. Both of them, they're undefeated right now. Rohan Polanco has been on a few of these top ranked cards. I think, he was on there for the theater at Madison Square Garden when they had the last one there that was televised by ESPN, right? So they're building up Rohan Polanco. Now you got Tiger Johnson in the mix. He's going to be entering these rankings for these sanctioning bodies. So that could be a potential clash there at welterweight between those two. I think that would be really, really good scrap there. So you're saying what is it the thing you're asking for on Pro Box? For Lester Martinez, his potential fight, that could be on Pro Box. You know what I mean? As far as like Christian and Billy, him being under Eye of the Tiger management, you got Jaime Munguia. I don't know if Jaime Munguia is still in the Golden Boy though. So that would kind of like be interesting. I gotta catch up with all that. You know what I mean? Shout out my guy Gorge in the building. He says we need Tiger Johnson versus Richard Hitchens. The only thing is Tiger Johnson says, hey, he's gonna be established there at 147. Yeah, he kind of like was competing there around 140, but hey, we got to see if he's able to do his thing here now, getting that win over Nicholas Flores. As I mentioned, Nicholas Flores being what is it? I would say ranked number 11 in the WBO. So he's gonna kind of like have that be removed in the next rankings for the WBO, right? So and with Richard Hitchens, being the IBF champion at 140, we got to see where he's going to be at, because I've said this for a while. After he got that win over George Kambosos Jr., there should be only one fight out there for Richard Hitchens. And his manager is not, it doesn't look like he's up for making that happen. And that's unification with Richard Hitchens and Teofimo Lopez. But, we will see how that goes, right? Shout out to L-Dub. If Norman wins next week, I could see Norman doing a homecoming in the A versus Tiger Johnson. Okay, great that you said that, L-Dub. Great that you said that, because There was one point. I'm gonna just put this out there. There was one point where before a fight Tiger Johnson had, the team for Tiger Johnson said that, listen, if Tiger was in there with Brian Norman Jr., they would embarrass him. That's what someone on their team said. I'm not saying when it happened. I'm not saying where that happened. All I'm going to say that is the statement was made. So, if Brian Norman Jr. wins this bout against Devin Haney on November 22nd, and especially if he gets a knockout win or a stoppage win over Devin Haney, that would give him a whole lot of momentum to get a fight in Atlanta, Georgia, and a fight with Tiger Johnson. That would definitely be a good one there on the cards there on that front. You know what I mean? So that's a good possibility. Right? All right. So that kind of like was it as far as like the whole thing with the fact or fiction. Just had one bonus one here for y'all since someone kind of like mentioned Terrence Crawford, right? And that maybe he could potentially face maybe the winner of Erislandy Lara and Janibek Alhamla, or maybe kind of like wait a little bit and see if there's going to be a fight for undisputed, and then fight the winner for undisputed. So how would I put this? All right, Terrence Crawford won't come back to face any of those fighters at middleweight because there could be an even bigger fight on the horizon for Terrence Crawford in 2026. Fact or fiction? Right now, for me, it's a fact. I said it, what was it, a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago. If there's like 3 options out there for Terrence Crawford, that's much bigger than any fighter there at middleweight. So winning the unified titles at middleweight, or winning like the undisputed title at middleweight and becoming a 4-division undisputed champion, yeah, it's still professional boxing at the end of the day. Now, I would say this: 3 fighters. Now, the only caveat is 2 of those fighters, those fights wouldn't necessarily be like actual professional fights. 2 of them, no, but one of them would. And of course, the obvious choice there would be a rematch with Santos Alvarez Barragan. Yep, that's right, a rematch with Canelo Alvarez. Yeah, even if with him you're recovering and everything like that, I still say that the most lucrative fight there for Terrence Crawford, as far as like an actual matchup, is Canelo Alvarez, right? Hey, someone mentioned that. Hey, I saw that Crawford was fighting Carlos Adames in March. It might have been clickbait. Uh, might have been. The only thing is like, what who would be really interested in putting money behind that fight? That's number one. And number two, would it lead to like an ultimate fight between, if he faces Carlos Adames, then the winner would fight, the Lara versus Janibek winner? Maybe. But outside of that, is Carlos Adames big enough for Terrence Crawford to kind of like get up and have a fight? The only way I'll say that is if it's guaranteed that he has a fight with Adames, he wins, and then he gets the winner pretty much soon after that. Outside of that, I would be surprised, because that would mean that he would be fighting more than once in a year. And when has he done that over the past 5 years? Just saying that. Now back to what I was talking about. Potential rematch with Canelo Alvarez, undisputed super middleweight titles. You can see that. Okay. The other 2 wouldn't necessarily be actual fights. They would be exhibitions. Number one, Jake Paul. That would be a potential one. Okay, Jake Paul. We did mention the whole thing as far as like the Tank fight falling through. What could be potentially happening on December 14th? If Jake Paul has a fight on December 14th, then yeah, maybe that's cool. Of course, Jake Paul did mention at one point that he wanted to fight Canelo Alvarez before the whole thing with Canelo, at the first time around, right? Going to have the bout in Saudi Arabia, right? And then after that, facing Terrence Crawford. So hey, why not go after the guy that defeated Canelo Alvarez? That's on Jake Paul's side. So Canelo as a potential opponent, Jake Paul as a potential opponent, and the other fighter that was mentioned, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now that exhibition, how much money, someone asked it, how much money would, when they asked it, Turkey pay to have a fight between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Terrence Crawford? That would be an extravagant amount of money, and it would be something where, yeah, maybe Floyd Mayweather would, go ahead and step up and have that fight. Exhibition, of course, but still have that fight. And you would have the best fighter of one era versus the best fighter of another era. So if you have enough interest for that and enough money behind it, yeah, listen, hey, like I said, man, Crawford versus Mayweather episode, gigantic. Listen, as I was saying back then, when they were talking about Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao having a rematch, that opened the door for this being a possibility. So that told me like, oh well, Floyd Mayweather, oh he's willing to get back. It was okay. So Floyd is willing to get back in the ring to have a fight against somebody if he gets a good or the right amount of money. All right, Manny Pacquiao's won, so why not Terrence Crawford? As I was mentioning, you got Terrence Crawford now as the definitive best fighter of this era. You had Floyd Mayweather in the era before that being the best fighter of his era. So why not put them two together? We'll see if that would be any type of possibility. But I would say those three fights, Jake Paul, Canelo rematch, Floyd Mayweather, those three would kind of like be above or are higher on the priority list for Terrence Crawford than a fight with any of those middleweights that are out there that hold the world title. So that's the thing that I had on that front. All right. So that's me covering what's going down here through this particular episode of Real Boxing. Like I said, once again, shout out to Coach Ronnie Shields, who is on his way to Saudi Arabia with Vito Milnicki Jr., as Vito Milnicki Jr. has his fight on November 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, part of Ring 4. So we're not going to have Coach Ronnie here. Well, of course, we're going to have him here on the show this week. He's going to be in Riyadh there next week. So we're going to see what we're going to do for next Tuesday as well, right? All right. So, but big thanks for everyone that's listening in to this particular edition of Real Boxing. We got a lot. We got a lot that's in store for tomorrow. Actually, hopefully we get everything locked in. We're supposed to actually have 2 interviews scheduled for tomorrow. 2, and one where we're going to get talk with a fighter that has the upcoming bout on November 22nd at Maryland Live, on the Jeter Promotions card. So we're going to have that. And hopefully we have world champion on with us tomorrow afternoon there. But we got, like his brother Adam said, yeah, go Vito. Yeah, shout out to Adam there on that front. Yep. And Kaplan says, we need another UFC versus boxing event to keep boxing at the forefront of entertainment. I don't completely agree with that, but my thing is, I think that boxing has to have consistent big events to keep boxing in the forefront of entertainment. And the thing about it is, with I would say the current state of boxing right now, you don't have that many fighters out there, particularly in America, that would give you enough big events on that front. So like if you name the top money makers or so in boxing, you talk about Tank Davis, you could talk about Canelo Alvarez, maybe you could talk about Ryan Garcia. Outside of that, who do you have? I probably would have said Terrence Crawford after him getting the win over first Errol Spence Jr., but then he had his fight against Islam Majumov, and now he has the win over Canelo Alvarez. What does that mean for him, for popularity, and the man to see him step in the ring again? That we're going to find out over these next few months, because we already see like what he kind of asked for as far as like how much he wants to get paid, but we'll see. It said, Boots versus Virgil would help. Oh, here's another thing too, right? That I didn't mention through the fact of fiction, as far as like the whole thing with Boots and Virgil, right? That fight right there is probably the biggest fight that could be made for the zone in the U.S. Actually, I think it is the biggest fight that the zone could have in the U.S. And whether you have execs here in the U.S. or you have what is that man's name? Vlad Vanek, who runs all of those media companies, including the zone. Whatever money you could put towards this, regardless if you don't put as much money towards boxing in comparison to other sports around the world, listen, put whatever you can to make this fight happen. If they talking about, we want 10 million, okay. But my thing is this: if you're going to put up 10 million, where are you going to have it at? And see, that's the other thing too, is with the zone, you got to have it to where if we put this money into this particular fight, how are we going to be able to get our money back? How are we going to be able to get the subscriptions? Because y'all seen what's going on with the zone and their subscription package now, right? So you mean to tell me that you're going to have people who have like regular subscription and then have like something where they pay like $79.99 or whatever type thing that they have going on every 4 months or something? I don't know. And you want to have more subscribers, but yet you have these, subscription packages. Y'all are going to have something on there where it would be worth these people investing that money into the zone. And Boots versus Virgil right now, is it enough? I'm leaning towards no, not right now. Is it one of the more anticipated bouts that we could see? Yeah. But is it worth $25 million, so to speak? How about that? I'll put out $25 million. Is it worth $25 million in the purse total? And I'm not all too sure about that. Is the zone willing to put the risk on to put that much money up? This is not like a Showtime. This is not like a HBO. This is not like ESPN. This is something where like everything is, what do they say, on demand, so to speak, right? So every single thing has to basically be what? They have to pay for it. It's not like part of a package. It's not part of cable. It's not, no. You just have to get it straight up, just like Amazon Prime. Like you have to pay something a month for Amazon Prime, just like you have to pay this a month for the zone. So, and the way that they work, you don't really have that much established here in the U.S. So that's why it costs that much in the U.S., because they really don't have that much resources up there. So, yeah. But yeah, man. Kevin says, yeah, that's nasty work, man. 25 million, that would be nasty work. 15 tops. I would kind of like side with you on that. I was high with you on that. 15 million tops total for a purse with Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz. Yeah, I would be completely cool with that. Now, as far as like the split, I don't know, 9 million for Boots, 6 million for Virgil Ortiz. And some people might say that's even generous for Virgil Ortiz, given what happened in Fort Worth. And compared to what Boots Ennis has done in his past few fights. So, hey. But I kind of like agree with you on that as far as like the total purse. 15 makes more sense total than anything close to like 20 and 25. So that's what you got. All right. So that's what I got. Like I said, tomorrow we got more content tomorrow. It's gonna be very busy tomorrow. So looking forward to that. And as I said, we're gonna have see if we have another show like this next week, next Tuesday. As of course, you're gonna have the big fight card on for November 22nd, and you got Coach Ronnie there for that. Like I said, he's been on the road a lot, and he's going to be on the road a lot more here for the rest of this month. So I would say, this week, next week, gonna be busy. And then once he gets back, that would be 22nd, and then he got another fighter that's fighting on November 29th, right? So packed schedule for Coach Ronnie Shields, and we always welcome his presence here, of course, on the Boxing Source, and of course a shout out to our co-host there, Brother Joseph Herron of War Week Boxing, that has been able to bless me to have hosted the show here for some time now. So we're gonna keep that ball rolling, and like I said, tomorrow we got 2 interviews scheduled. We got the midweek report. Also, that's gonna include one of those interviews. So y'all tune in for that. And until next time, folks, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.
Boxing Source proudly presents Real Boxing with legendary fight trainer Ronnie Shields.